Hi there, Godfather of Anxiety. I decided it was finally time to do a video on social anxiety disorder. I put this off for a couple of reasons that I'm going to tell you right now. For one thing, when I launched my channel, I wanted what was going to be unique about it and what could be especially helpful to my audience would be that I'm giving you a firsthand perspective. And when it comes to social anxiety disorder as a primary diagnosis, that's never been my primary diagnosis. So for that reason, I hadn't made a video on it yet. So because it's never been my primary diagnosis, I have been a little hesitant to make this video. However, to be clear, I have experienced a large amount of social anxiety and symptoms that are directly reflective and indicative and the same as people who suffer from social anxiety disorder. It's just never been the primary impetus or cause of my anxiety. So that's one of the reasons that I decided that I wouldn't make this video right away when I launched my channel. However, why I feel compelled to make this video is because people that I care about very deeply, love very much, have had their lives dramatically impacted and affected by social anxiety disorder and its crippling effects. So I feel like it's very important to tell their story, and hopefully in the very near future, I will make a video that will essentially be an interview with one of these people that I love very much, that has gone through this and had their life really limited by social anxiety. So first of all, let's get to what social anxiety is. I mean, obviously you can guess, but it's long-term and overwhelming fear of social situations. Now, to people who are not familiar with anxiety spectrum conditions, they're like, everybody gets nervous in a crowd. You know, everybody gets nervous when there's people around they don't know, or, you know, the first day of school, stuff like this. This is not what social anxiety disorder is. I just want to be clear on that. Just like depression isn't when you have a down day. That's not clinical depression. That does not do any justice to clinical depression. Or even when you've been impacted by a really negative or horrible event and you're down for a period of weeks or months afterwards, that's still not indicative of clinical depression. But just like that doesn't do any justice to that condition, you know, comparing social anxiety to, you know, the type of typical social fear that we feel, all of us, even neurotypical people feel on a regular basis, is not what's going on when people are clinically affected by social anxiety disorder. This is a paralyzing fear. This is their body produces the same response from an everyday, regular social occurrence that a neurotypical person would experience that response if they were on the verge of being in a car accident or attacked by an apex predator. So that is literally, you know, this is a paralyzing fear. And to give some specific examples of what types of things people with social anxiety disorder are petrified of, any social situation, they a phone is the big one, right? Talking on the phone, a fate worse than death for a lot of people with social anxiety disorder. Also, anytime there's a perception that there's an audience, right? They have this sickening fear of being embarrassed or scrutinized. And then even after the fact, they'll go through, if they were forced to be in a social situation, they go through in their mind and torment themselves about how they may have been scrutinized or judged, or how they may have interacted inappropriately in some way. And it basically takes over their life. And it makes all of these different social interactions impossible. And so they'll have fear of being judged, fear of being embarrassed, and again, like I just mentioned, that not being able to perform in front of an audience or a perceived audience, right? Because neurotypical people will realize that, listen, there might be 100 people around and 99 of them aren't paying attention to you, right? Honestly, unless you're a celebrity or, have some other, your hair is on fire or something, a lot of the times in a big crowd, you'll just blend in. But that you never feel that way when you have social anxiety disorder. And things like going into a store, or even just being around, when you're going to be around people that you don't know really well, you can have intense, paralyzing fear that triggers panic attacks, that causes all of those anxiety symptoms, where your face is flush, where your breathing becomes shallow, and you have that knot in your stomach that, again, only if you have one of these anxiety spectrum disorders will you know what I'm talking about. But that sickening, impending doom feeling that will happen right before you have a panic attack or feel like you're going to just expire on the spot. And these people with social anxiety disorder, social situations cause that level of interference with their life. It makes it impossible to do things like make new friends, or even consider dating or having a relationship, a romantic relationship, because it just seems like way too big of a mountain to climb. These people are having a difficult time having a 3-minute phone conversation with the doctor's office. That is a fate worse than death. So, again, having witnessed this firsthand with people that I care about very deeply, and also having to somewhat guide them through it, again, is the reason why I have to make this video. I feel compelled to. And I know also another big reason why I made the video, and making the video, is because it's dramatically on the rise. We can all imagine why social anxiety disorder is dramatically on the rise. Guys, it's very obvious, because people are spending so much, even as young children, spending a lot of time on their devices and not learning to interact socially face to face in the way in which we're designed as humans to use our 5 senses to interact with people. And because of this, social media, all of the things, all of the time that people are spending with each other, but not with each other, right, has played a huge part in this dramatic rise in social anxiety disorder. And I don't think I'm being, hyperbolic here to say that you guys, if you go through a drive-through at a fast food restaurant, right, and again, I understand, I don't want to be that old guy who's somehow denigrating the next generation. I believe that people are people. But you can clearly see, even in, 30-second interaction with a drive-through person at a fast food restaurant, that a lot of the younger people are way less comfortable interacting socially than people from just a generation or two ago. And there's little doubt in my mind that social media, cell phones, electronic devices have played a large role in this. But I'm not judging it. technology changes, and we need to adapt, right? So it's very important. However we got here, the most important thing is to understand, what's going on, but to also understand the importance of learning how to interact socially, face to face, with human beings, the way that nature and God designed us to interact. So anyways, now let me just give you guys some of because I always I'm not going to make a video where I feel as though I have nothing to add personally. And I think there's a lot of other channels on YouTube and a lot of other websites you can go to just read textbook definitions about the various mental health conditions. But I did, during my, suffering with panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, I did experience severe social anxiety. So it has given me a little bit of insight into how this works. I remember when my anxiety was really bad, untreated, conversations with people, especially people I didn't know well, whether it was people at work or people that I would run into, I would hold my breath during the conversation. And, and then at the same time, I'm praying they don't realize that I'm holding my breath. And I'm trying not to act like I got to get out of here. But at the same time, I know that, if they were really socially aware, they probably could tell that I didn't feel like having a long conversation with them. And I was just so uncomfortable. Also, during that time, I felt like a spectacle every place I went, because when you have these anxiety conditions, any of them, you feel very vulnerable. You feel like the wounded person in the group of animals that the lion is going to target. And you just hope people can't tell how wounded you are. And during that time, I was so uncomfortable in social situations, and it was exacerbated greatly by the fact that I weighed about 350 pounds. So every time I heard someone laugh, or every time, I walked by a group of people, I'm hyper aware of how that could be, that I was probably the person they were laughing at, that I was the punchline of the joke, and that I was being scrutinized in a negative way constantly. And I felt like this. I felt like that actually for a couple of years. I felt this, and it was very intense. So, I do understand how social anxiety works. Again, there were other complicating factors to that time where I would never, again, say that my primary mental health condition was social anxiety disorder. That wouldn't be an honest assessment of it. But I definitely experienced social anxiety to a very high degree. And it was one of my triggers. So, and then at this point, I just want to give a couple of secondhand, firsthand accounts from people very close to me. As I said, I plan on doing an interview with at least one of these people, hopefully soon. We'll see how that works out. But, I talk about the, inability to speak on the phone. And when I mean an inability to speak on the phone, I mean literally someone's on the other end and you can't get your voice to come out. And you see the person's face turn white. I've watched this happen. And, it's hard to believe that the anxiety just to speak on the phone about something incredibly inconsequential, right? This isn't like, am I going to get a cancer diagnosis, or, I'm talking to the IRS or something like that. This is something silly like ordering food, or, checking to see what time a movie's playing. Okay? This should not be like walking the plank. But for people with social anxiety disorder, that's exactly what it's like. And it's, I can only imagine how, if you've had that for a number of years, how that will make you not want to just be around people, period, right? So that was one of the secondhand experiences. And then again, just like I mentioned, having such a hard time making friends. When you have severe social anxiety and you feel like you're going to vomit when you're around people, the idea of forming a strong social bond, especially in a group setting, but even in a smaller group setting, seems like climbing the south face of Everest. And then to take that a step further, to ever form a bond close enough to have a romantic relationship with somebody, for people with social anxiety, this seems like an impossibility. It just seems like, there's no way I'll ever be able to do that. And this is why this is an important video. And again, it's not. I don't want to make an extremely long video, but I felt like with as many people who are suffering from this, who are having a hard time just doing very essential, normal, small, everyday social interaction face to face, and people who have social anxiety disorder, I didn't want to leave them out because I know, again, it's on the rise. 15 million people are experiencing this terrible condition, and I wanted to definitely include them in the channel, especially having experienced this for a couple of years intensely. But overall I have had a lot of social anxiety as well, just not as a primary diagnosis. So now, as far as treatment goes, I always how to get better from social anxiety. Number one, like I always tell you guys, if you haven't seen a mental health professional, get help. Go see a mental health professional, and that will be the quickest way to recover, to work your way through social anxiety. I promise you that. The next thing I'll mention is the 3 things I always mention that are super important. They're important with social anxiety too. Get your sleep, quantity and quality. Get your exercise 3 times a week, at least 30 minutes. And don't let food control you. Don't self-medicate with food. You get nervous about a social interaction, don't treat it with pizza and ice cream and, and again, I'm not telling you guys what to eat, but when you start to use food as a Band-Aid, take it from somebody who's gone deep down that road. Not a good place, and it's just going to exacerbate everything that you're already, the social interactions aren't going to be easier if you become morbidly obese. I promise you that. Then, okay, so when you go and see a mental health professional, cognitive behavioral therapy is going to be a part of getting better from this. And they may have you write down, keep a journal, keep track of what you're thinking in certain social situations to help you get an idea of what's triggering you, along with maybe the lack of logic behind what you're actually thinking. And then, of course, part of your treatment may include, pharmaceutical intervention or medication. But if it does, and I find this is especially true of social anxiety, that is going to be a tool. That's going to be a tool, right? It's going to make it maybe so that when you walk into a restaurant, you don't feel like you're being chased by a bear. Or when a phone rings and you have to answer it, you don't feel like, you're base jumping without a parachute. But if it does improve those and lessen those feelings, you have to do the therapy, the exposure therapy, to work through it. So you got to force yourself to talk on the phone. You've got to force yourself into social situations, again, in a controlled manner, right? You don't go from severe social anxiety to going up on stage at a rock concert. You don't go from, you know, something, you know, where your life is unable to be lived to trying to do daring social interactions. That's silly, and it's not going to be productive, because you will trigger and actually end up reinforcing those fear behaviors if you do that, if you go too far with it. But it's just as important not to stay in that limited prison that social anxiety has kept you in. You can't stay in that. A lot of people with social anxiety don't even like to, you know, I'm going to be honest here, they have a hard time finding employment because, again, most jobs require social interaction. So, you know, this is a very severe form of anxiety to have as far as how impactful it is on living your life, providing for yourself. But then, you know, the real meat of our lives, the thing that makes life worth living is the relationships we form. You know, the love that we're able to exchange with our family and friends. And, you know, when you're robbed of this because of social anxiety disorder, I mean, I'm sure the social anxiety disorder has unfortunately caused a lot of people to think of, you know, not continuing with this life. So very important to get treatment, follow the protocols of the treatment. And again, once you start feeling a little better, you know, keep taking another step forward. Don't stay status quo. Don't stay in the limited life that social anxiety has brought you to. Keep trying to expand. And again, do so in a controlled, deliberate way. And then, like I've say in all my videos, that when I'm talking about getting better from these things, if you have a bad day or you let an avoidance behavior win on a certain day, it's one day, it's one time. Compartmentalize it as that. And then tomorrow's a new day. You have to understand that. You know, these conditions, they can be relentless. But if you force your way through them in a controlled way, you'll find that you'll be able to, at least if not completely eradicate them from your life, have them be something that you just have to manage in the background. And that way you can live your life and enjoy life the way that, you know, it was intended in a way that it was intended to be lived. So that's pretty much what I want to say. Again, I try not to talk about things secondhand. There's a lot of information out there that you guys can get from websites and other channels where you can listen to doctors and people who, you know, have spent years of their lives being educated on these mental health conditions. The whole purpose of my channel is to give a firsthand perspective and things that I have seen specifically that work for me. So this was a little different, but I do plan, as I've mentioned a couple times already, do plan on doing an interview with somebody with social anxiety disorder and to help give a firsthand perspective on that condition. And I certainly didn't want to leave it out given the prevalence of it. And I think the importance of making this video in the times that we're living in. So again, thanks so much for the engagement, for the likes, for the comments. I love the comments. If you know anybody who's experiencing social anxiety and you see that their lives are being limited, they're having a hard time maybe getting employment, and you know that they're very uncomfortable talking on the phone, you know, encourage them to take a look at the videos that I make and on the channel, and it might help them at least realize that with social anxiety disorder especially, you are by no means alone. This is a growing phenomenon, but the importance of getting treatment and getting better so that you can enjoy life and use all your five senses, right? Not just watch life happen on a screen. You know, although it feels so safe to do it that way, it's so much less fulfilling than when we actually are interacting with people face to face and using all 5 senses. So again, thanks so much. And until my next video, take care.